we miss you. We're Group F, and we are talking about Ernest Shackleton and his leadership style. So we've got a video, short clip that we wanted you guys to watch, so we'll post that for you. So just have a look at that. So I assume most of you have watched the documentary on Ernest Shackleton. If you haven't watched it, it's very interesting. So I guess you kind of all know his story, what he did, all of that. But for those of you who haven't watched it yet, I'll just give you a very brief overview of who he is and what he has done. So Ernest Shackleton was a polar explorer who led 3 British expeditions to the Antarctic. His first experience in the Antarctic was as the 3rd officer for Captain Robert Falcon Scott's Discovery expedition in 1904. Unfortunately, he got sent home due to health issues, so he didn't quite make it. But as a restless soul, as Shackleton was, he turned his attention to the concept of crossing the Antarctic. Crossing Antarctica. So after choosing his crew based on their personality, he sent out a ad in the newspaper clipping, giving this whole spiel about how it's going to be a traumatic journey, and you may not come back alive, and obviously got 5,000 applicants to apply, and he chose all of his crew and his team based on their personality rather than their experience. So after choosing them, they set off on their expedition, and then just a few months into their journey, disaster struck. Pack ice surrounded their ship, locking it into place, and they couldn't move, basically hindered them from moving forward for the next, for the winter, so quite a few months, I can't remember how long it was. So after endlessly trying to cut the ice to find a path through, they kind of gave up, and Shackleton reevaluated his journey and kind of realised that trying to cross Antarctica was going to be a little bit tricky. So he changed his goals from crossing Antarctica to getting all his men home safely and alive, because he knew that the Antarctica was littered with dead bodies, and it was basically a journey towards death if they tried to do that. So he changed his goal. So over the 2 years, Shackleton kept his men's morale alive by organising daily routines and showing no sign of panic in disastrous moments, which was probably his saving grace. And eventually Shackleton succeeded and managed to get all his men back home safely. So now you've got a little bit of the background about Shackleton. We're going to analyse his leadership style according to Sharma's take on the blind spot of leadership. So we live in a world with many institutional failures, and Sharma argues that the cause of this failure is due to the fact that we are blind to the deeper dimensions of leadership and transformational change. So according to Sharma, blind spots appear not only in our collective leadership, but also in our daily and our everyday social interactions. So there's a lot of information today on great leaders and what they've done, what they've achieved, and who they are, but you're never really told how they've achieved it. I mean, if you think about all the great leaders today, you know that they've done this and that, but you don't know what was going through their mind. How did they have the ability to push forward through the most darkest of times, most difficult times? How do they manage to inspire their team? What quality do these leaders possess to make men follow them into the heart of darkness? So Sharma refers to something called the inner place. This is a source, and so he basically says this is the source from which these leaders operate. So we'll show you a little clip as well for this, which we'll post in the video. So like David was saying in our very first lecture, that entrepreneurship starts in the heart. And this is true for all leaders. You've got to have a strong heart to get through the darkest of times. So thinking about the NLPs, we're going to talk about Shackleton and how he led his men, or what made him so successful in getting his men home safely. So the 4 types of listening described by Shackleton, we've decided that the generative type of listening was the most relevant. And generative type of listening is an active and intensive listening that really evokes the best qualities in others. So you can really see this in Shackleton's leadership style, the fact that he evaluated the whole situation and decided to change his goals from something that he really wanted to do to get his men home safely. When the ship went down, they had to move all their supplies off onto the ice. They only had 18 reindeer fur sleeping bags, and he made the men draw strings but rigged it so that the leaders didn't get the reindeer fur, so he made sure that his men were always put first and all their safety was always put first. So he's really listened to their kind of personalities and just always focused on making them okay with going forward. The same is to be said when they got to Elephant Island. They had to take this horrendous journey of 800 miles to go and get a rescue boat, but he noticed that some of his men wouldn't make the journey, so he only chose the strongest men to make sure that they all got home safely in the end, the most resilient men. And this ability to listen and really understand other people's qualities was his saving grace and the reason why he was so successful. So you can really see that Shackleton wasn't thinking with his head, he was thinking with his heart. And he was feeling the troubles that his men were feeling, and he put himself on the same level as them, and he always put them first and made sure that they were okay. So that's really what his generative type of, well, that's his generative listening quality. So with all those factors in place, we think that he kind of got, well, the blind spot that he faced, which was the boat being taken by the ice and not being able to get away. The fact that he was aware of this blind spot made him kind of I forgot what I was going to say. Just kind of made him get over this obstacle and get everyone home safely. That's that. Oh no, sorry, hang on. So we're going to talk now about the U, 1 process and 3 movements. So Brian Arthur claims that there are 2 fundamentally different sources of cognition: the application of existing and accessing one's inner knowledge often leads to innovation. Below is an analysis of Shackleton's attempt to access to the latter in accordance to Arthur's suggested 3 movements. So in order to achieve this, so you have to go through observation firstly. So after denying the dangerous reality that Shackleton made himself and his men face despite constant warnings from his captain, he eventually learnt to let go of his habitual methods that he forcefully applied and initially became open-minded to a new goal: saving lives and saving lives. So basically this is what made Shackleton so successful, like I said before. The fact that he was able to let go and listen and put his men first and kind of give up on his kind of glory of crossing Antarctica, he was able to be a successful leader. So we've also looked at the 7 leadership capacities. So Sharma's lastly states that in order to achieve the above mentioned as a team, a new social technology is required. The technology is based on the following 7 essential leadership capacities and must be cultivated. So firstly, holding the space. Initially, Shackleton held the space by means of exploiting his authority with his individual intent and not that of his captain. This ultimately changed when he had no other choice but listen to what life called him to do in that situation. He had to listen to himself and others and his group. He had to listen to himself, others in his group situation to take responsibility for his life. Although the focus on the highest future possibly changed for the group, he applied his attention equally to his 2 situations. Observation. Shackleton did not initially keep an open mind and was heavily focused on his initial goal, despite the caution that was given to him. He faced difficulty in letting go of his pre-existing ideas until he had no choice but to re-evaluate his priorities as a leader. Eventually, he could no longer make judgments based on his past experiences and had to use what he currently had to move forward in a positive light. Sensing and pre-sensing. Shackleton made a shift from just having an open mind to initially having a successful expedition to an open heart, and which would drive the expedition in order to save lives. Crystallizing. Shackleton used his authority to access the power of attention. His commitment transcended to men and resulted in an energy files that attracted the right mindset needed to realize his new goal. Prototyping. Shackleton moved from having his head dominated to connecting to the bigger possibilities that essentially gave access to heart and hand. This demonstrated in how he managed the fear of his men by keeping them engaged in routine work to keep their minds from wandering in uncontrollable ways. That could have performing. There is insufficient evidence found to suggest that Shackleton put together the right people who were connected in the right way through the same objects, nor was the mode of operation one of co-creation. The entire journey was led by instructions that everyone brought into it. So by putting these 7 leadership capacities into one, Shackleton was able to be a successful leader and make his men listen to him and trust him. And by trusting them, it allowed them to trust him equally.